Sony's history with controllers is quite infamous, with each version housing new innovations. Now with the unveiling of the new DualSense controller for the PlayStation 5 console, we are left to imagine what new innovations it will include. But before we talk about the new DualSense controller, let's go way back and have a little history lesson on the evolution of the PlayStation controller so far. In 1994, the original PlayStation controller was released alongside the PlayStation 1. It had the arrow 1, arrow 2, L1 and L2 buttons, the D-pad, and the iconic X, circle, square and triangle action buttons. 3 years later, in 1997, the PlayStation Dual Analog Controller was released, which was basically the original controller with 2 joysticks added to it. It also had an analog button that's used to toggle between digital and analog modes. In the same year of 1997, in November, Sony released a new controller called the DualShock. The major difference with this controller was that Sony added vibration feedback for a more immersive experience in games. Although, a game had to support vibration feedback for it to work. In 2000, the DualShock 2 was launched alongside the PlayStation 2. All the buttons of the DualShock 2 controller were pressure sensitive except the start, select, L3 and L3 buttons. Then in 2006, alongside the PlayStation 3, Sony launched the 6-axis controller. Design-wise, it looks almost identical to the DualShock 2 controller, but the major difference was that it was fully wireless. The analog button was also replaced with the PlayStation button. The vibration feedback wasn't included in this controller due to some patent issues Sony had at the time. Less than a year later, Sony settled the patent issue they had and released the DualShock 3 controller, which was basically a 6-axis controller with vibration feedback. Then in 2013, when Sony launched the PlayStation 4, they also launched the DualShock 4 controller. The design from Sony's first PlayStation controller to the DualShock 3 looks almost identical, but the DualShock 4 was the first major design change. The handles were longer and more comfortable to hold and use. The joysticks were now concaved, allowing for better grip. Right at the middle of the controller, Sony added a massive touchpad which also had pressable buttons. Other major changes were the massive LED strip and the ability to connect your headphones directly to the controller. Personally, this was my favorite feature in the DualShock 4 controller. Finally, we've made it back to the latest controller Sony has introduced, the DualSense. Design-wise, just like the DualShock 4, the DualSense has a completely new design. Although Sony only revealed the white color variant, we're expecting Sony to release more color variants just like the DualShock 4. A lot of people have been talking about how it looks more like an Xbox One controller. Another noticeable change is that the touchpad has gotten larger. It still has the LED light, but it's now around the touchpad rather than underneath. According to Sony, the battery has been improved significantly, and they also added an onboard microphone, meaning you can now chat without plugging in your personal microphone, though the 3.5mm headphone jack is still included. Now let's talk about the changes that could affect your gameplay. First, we have the new adaptive pressure L2 and L3 buttons, which, just like an actual gun trigger, gets harder the further you push them down. The biggest change, which is also the main reason this is called a DualSense and not a DualShock, is that it features a full haptic engine throughout the controller. Yeah, that sounds cool, but what is it? The PS5's haptic feedback, according to Sony, is so good that you can feel the textures in the game. You will be able to feel the mud, asphalt, snow, and much more. And for shooter games, you can feel how different guns shoot during gameplay. Now, this is a real game changer. This is how far we have come from the original PlayStation 1 controller. If you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing. Until the next one, stay safe and peace.